don't know how much I really have to say when it comes to the Squid Game phenomenon that has hit the world. I understand how popular it is. Uh, Sitting through it and, you know, watching this story progress, it does have its phenomenal moments. I do appreciate the story it brings to the table. I do know that there are a lot of, behind the scenes stories that a lot of people are talking about, especially when it comes to the big one being the writer slash director of the whole thing. I don't think I'll pronounce his name correctly. Let's just call him HD. It's like Huang Dong Yuk, if that's the correct way to pronounce it. I'm reading it right now. I don't know if that's correct, but we'll call him HD. So HD apparently writes this story like 15 years ago. Tries to sell it. Nobody wants to pick it up. He does all these things to try to make a living and whatnot while still trying to sell this story. Now, another thing that people have to remember is that he's also been directing since 20 years ago. Granted, it's probably stuff that nobody has ever heard of because they're all, released in Korea. They're all films for, his country. So we have never heard of him until Squid Game became such a phenomenon. So then all these stories started coming out about the stuff that he went through as a young and struggling writer in South Korea with this script that nobody would give a chance to. Now, I have my thoughts about the idea of why they didn't give it a chance, and I'll get to that in a second. But let's just talk about its premise. And I think everybody understands its premise. People who are in financial debt are given a chance to win a lot of money in these games where you get killed. Now, is this an overdone concept? Not necessarily, because each iteration of this concept is in some way, shape, or form different. People say it's the same as the Hunger Games. No, it's not. Hunger Games had a very much different concept, even though it was the idea of a bunch of people killed, there's supposed to be one winner. There's a lot of movies with that idea. The Running Man, Hunger Games, Battle Royale, another overseas Asian film. I believe it's also another Korean film about teenage high schoolers. And there is no prize. The prize is you just get to survive. The Condemned with Stone Cold Steve Austin, where they do it with prisoners and they stream it live for everybody to see. It's not like the fact that because it's overdone, it's the idea that you can take that initial nugget of an idea and plant it and see what it would grow into, because it's just a basis for what the story could go into. You know what I mean? Like, why do we have so many other superhero storylines? They're all the same. They come from some perilous background. They're trying to be better at life, and then they're trying to save the world. If you wanted to say that story is so overdone, then we wouldn't have as many superheroes in the comic book world or the movie world or the TV world as we have. So, on that note, I get it. On the other note, I also get why nobody probably wanted to pick up on that, because of the fact that it's very much not too unique. What's unique is the process of the story and going through it with all of these characters and all of the twists and turns that happens when it comes to the idea of the humanity in it, And I think there's one big issue that we all have when it comes to people dying in TV or movies. I don't know if it's just a me thing, but I feel like sometimes you'll see somebody die in a movie or a TV show, and it won't affect you, I guess, how they expect it to, or maybe how it did like 30 or 40 years ago, because it's really not a big deal to us anymore. Like, that sense of reality of somebody's death in a film there's really no consequence in our brains, so we don't process the idea of somebody being killed with such tremendous, shock or grief or anything. We're so desensitized to the idea that people dying in films don't affect us. It's the connection we have with characters that affects us when those characters are no longer there. And there's one episode, I want to say it's maybe episode 5 or 6, where it's the epitome of that, where you really see that it's not about the fact that they started with like 600 people and now they're down to the last like 40. It's not about that. Nobody cares about the other, 570 odd people that just died. Nobody cares about them. The idea of death in that circumstance doesn't affect us. It's the idea of the emotional connection that you're able to build with a character that affects you when a character dies. And the fact that they were able to do, not only were they able to get you to feel for characters that you had grown to like over the course of the show, but they also got you to feel for a completely different character that nobody cared about until the episode beforehand. It literally was that the one girl with this other girl that was just like, yeah, I'll let you. Like if you've seen the show, you know the scene I'm talking about. I can't remember which episode it is, but it's literally the episode with the marbles in it. It's literally the saddest, most shocking episode of the entire season. And I believe that's one of the only reasons that this got picked up, was to lead us all to that point, because that episode was so gut-wrenching. It was so heartbreaking when this guy betrayed the Muslim dude, when this girl sacrificed herself, when the main character was tricking the old man and the old man called him out on it. It was just so many things that happened in one episode. It made up for any sort of dullness that you felt within the first 5 episodes. Now, I get it. A lot of people talk about the shock and awe of that first episode, that first game, being enough to get you hooked. I guess, I don't see it. I definitely saw it as being like interesting, shocking, to say the least. If somebody told me that I would die in a game of freeze tag, yeah, sure, I would be affected by that, but not really. Like, again, like I feel that we're disconnected to that idea. And just seeing a bunch of people freak out over somebody dying isn't enough for me. But it is fun to watch. That was fun to see them just go through literally a third or 2/3 of the people that were meant to be in this game. But literally episode 6 or 7 was the most heartbreaking of the entire show. And literally the only reason to rewatch it again in my eyes is just to get up to that episode and then just stop. I could have stopped right there and been completely satisfied. Now, I don't want to say too much negative about the show. I do know that it has a huge fan base. I do know that it's in the works of getting a sequel, a second season. But I also need to emphasize on why I believe this took so long to kind of get a build-up, in a way, to get somebody to back it to the point where it would get this vast majority of popularity, the vast majority of the population to really get behind it and, like, fall in love with it. But I do know where it might have stopped. Some people might have stopped and said, no, this isn't worth it, for so many years. And it's the garbage ending. Like, I'm sorry, but that last episode is horrendous when it comes to what you are going through for the entire rest of that show. Everything leading up to that last episode is perfect, but that last episode where the twist is the old man and he's living on the streets for a year, and then he just decides, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to get up and do something with my life, and then he just dyes his hair red, and they're saying the symbolism is that is because he's angry. It's like, none of that makes any sense to me. And maybe it's meant to lead into whatever the sequel's supposed to be, but there's so much that happens in that very last episode that I just can't fathom the idea of rewatching this knowing that that's how it ends. Like, that last episode disappoints me as much as the last season of Game of Thrones. And I don't say that lightly. I don't like to downplay things that actually have good concepts. This is a good concept, but it has a shitty ending. And maybe people agree or don't disagree with me, or don't agree. Maybe they'll agree with me or disagree with me, but truthfully speaking, the ending to this first season could have been vastly better. Maybe he finds the dude who tricked him into joining the games and plays him again, and then he goes back into it, and it ends with him being part of another 400 people, so he can win again and win more money or try to break it on the inside. Like, who knows what could have possibly happened that could have led to that? Maybe he takes the money and puts it into research to finding out who these people are. But for him to just say, fuck the money, be homeless, and then the twist is the old man was behind it all along, and it's like, well, why did you do this? He's like, because I was bored. Because I had all this money and I didn't know what else to do. It's like, no. Like, I had no... You would expect that for a scene like that, when he first sees that the old man is still alive, you would expect a scene like that to really... Like, it's a gasp moment. You're supposed to gasp at that. I didn't gasp. I was confused. It made no sense to me. There's no connection to why the old man should have been the twist at the end of everything. Maybe there are some people that looked at it differently, but I gotta tell you, for the few dozen people that I've talked about with it, that's the number one thing they didn't really like about the show, is that they didn't get the old man twist. So if that was the original idea for the ending, that has been in that script for how 15, 20 years, however many odd years, that HD was sitting on that script for, and nobody would give it a chance. If that was the original ending, then I can understand why it took so long for anybody to give this a chance. Is it still worth its popularity on Netflix? Yes. Does it deserve a second season? Sure. What do we expect from that second season? I don't fucking know. All I know is that last episode is horrendous, and it's a tragedy to that story that's how it ends. And that's really how I feel about it. And I know more than enough people that agree with me, but I do know there's a lot of people that probably won't. And I know there's a lot of people that view it differently. But again, when it comes to the idea of a twist, I have to be shocked for a twist to work. And if that twist wasn't worth it, then that means there's at least a few other people out there, maybe a few thousand people out there that saw that and said, that wasn't worth it for me either. I could be wrong, but then again, this is just my perspective on sitting down and watching this and giving it a chance and being one of the millions of people who have given this a shot and have gotten it so much popularity. And just this entry alone gets it popular because I'm just another person talking about it. Maybe I'm speaking differently about it than anybody else is. Maybe there's other people reviewing it that are praising the ending. Maybe that twist really hit them and they couldn't believe it, and it was so shocking for them that the old man was alive, but I just didn't get it. There was no connection to make me think that would have done anything to me when it popped up. Like, I didn't feel the way I think the essential feeling they were trying to give off with that scene was, and because of that, it's just, this show only has 8 episodes to me, and that 9th one is just, if I ever rewatch it, I'm just rewatching it up to when he wins, and that's it. I'm never going to watch that last episode again because it's just, it's garbage. It's trash. I can't watch it. I can't.